Check, check, check. There we go. Tristan, can you just follow me around and like whenever I enter somewhere, you just say things like that? That would just be amazing. That'd really help with the wife at home. You'd really make me look really good. If we've not had the pleasure of really getting to know one another, my name's Adam. I got my little girl Haley back here. My son Elijah's at home with his mom. They're probably in bed watching a Hallmark film, much to my son's. He'd rather be on an Xbox, but Addison, good to see your face, girl. I haven't seen lots of faces. Manny being Manny. Love it, love it. So it's been so long since I've got to be in this room with all of you, so I'm so excited. I'll warn you now, I'm normally kind of like a little more upbeat and whatnot. I'm going to try to mix that in, but we're going to get kind of heavy real fast, all right? So we're just going to downshift into first gear and kind of hit it a little heavy. I'm so excited for this series. Every time Nate or Clay or someone tells me a series you guys are doing, I'm always like, that is so good. We need to steal it, rebrand it, and do it on Sunday morning, which we've done. So it's absolutely fantastic. So it's been a long time, not only since I've been in this room, but it's been a long time since I've been anywhere close to your age. So all that being said, who thinks they can guess my senior year, what year that was? Who thinks they can, besides Nate, because you're my son, so it's no fair. Who thinks they can get pretty close to what year I graduated high school? Who wants? You won't offend me. I've heard it all. Don't worry. Who's got something? Give me a number. Okay, I have 90s. We have a decade. We've narrowed it down to the correct decade. So, anybody got a guess? Come on. Who said 93? Tristan, really good. Yep. 93, we're close. We're close. Who said 94? 1994. That is awesome. 1994, I don't remember a lot. I think the O.J. Simpson trial was still happening. You may not know what that is. It was a big deal back then. So, tell me something about yourself that I don't know, which is almost anything. You're homeschooled. All right. Now, are you homeschooled because Utah said you had to be homeschooled, or you're homeschooled because your parents made a choice? Okay. Well, our kids are homeschooled. So any other homeschoolers in the house? Quite a few. Okay. Anybody's parents thinking of homeschooling you, even though you weren't pre-COVID? Anybody? All right. So that's good. Any of you go to school and you want to be homeschooled? Anybody? Yeah. Okay. All right. All right. So I went to private Baptist school of like from kindergarten to like 12th grade was like 60 people. And then I went to public high school. My freshman class, because at my school was 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, my freshman class was almost 1,000 people, just my freshman class. It was like a college campus. It was absolutely out of control. And so thank you for letting me get to know something about you. I'm going to do one more, and then we're going to hop in. Yep, something about you that I don't know. You like to draw? Pencil? It's my favorite. Would you do my portrait later? That'd be awesome. I am so jealous of anyone that can pencil draw. I can do nothing. Absolutely. Have you seen like the illustrations in Diary of a Wimpy Kid? That is like really good compared to what I can do. That is like Van Gogh or whatever. Pick any of those people that I don't know. If he's the one with no ear, I can't keep him straight. Here we go. You ready to downshift? Justice for all. So an 11th grade black student at his high school is performing on his auditorium in front of about 3,500 students. He's rapping, he's dancing. He's having a good time. We're all, well, I thought we were all enjoying it. And somewhere up towards the front of the auditorium, a white kid holds up a sign. And as he begins to turn it, you just see 3 letters on it that I want to show you. So that put an end to the dance and the rap pretty quickly, as you might have guessed, as he was one of the only African-American students at this school. 7th grade boy is on his lunch break, and he's lined up with about 12 other boys as they're getting ready to pick teams for soccer. And this boy is one of the last picks. And the way he is picked is one of the team captains points at him and says, I'll take that fag. 12th grade special ed student, special needs student, has decided to take his mother to prom. It's his senior prom. This young man's name is Josh Hooker, and some of the football players proceed to have quite a bit of fun at his expense by asking him over and over if he'll be taking a hooker with him to prom. And then laughing as Josh doesn't know that he's the joke. These are all true stories that I've personally witnessed firsthand. In fact, I was the one picked last in soccer. He didn't know my name, so he just went with fag. So on junior high and high school campuses, and in youth groups even, and in hangouts with teenagers, there are sometimes two groups of people. Teenagers who are gossiping, bullying, making fun of, rejecting, excluding others. And then often there's another group of teenagers that's there. And they're the group of teenagers who are standing by silently, seeing it, watching it, and doing absolutely nothing about it. So let me ask you a rhetorical question. I didn't know what rhetorical meant until I was in my 20s. So that just means don't answer it. Just think about it. You probably already knew. But is it easier to know something or do something? Think about that. Is it easier to know something or do something? Or let me ask you this. Is it easier to know what the right thing is to do, or is it easier to actually do it? I think, and I think you think, it is far easier to know what the right thing is to do than to actually do it. You can know it, you can feel it, and still remain silent. And I bet you have a story in your life. Maybe it's not as extreme as some of the stories I just told. Maybe it's worse. But I bet you have some memories, you have some stories, you have some recollections where you were in that group and you were in one of those two groups. Or actually, there's a third group. There's Josh and Adam and the black student. Maybe you were one of that group who was on the receiving end of whatever it was that was going on. And it stung and it hurt. Or maybe you were in the group that was kind of participating in it. You know, again, maybe it wasn't that bad. You weren't holding the sign. But you were kind of gossiping. You were kind of talking about people. You were excluding people for whatever reason. And then maybe you were in that last group, which I know I found myself a lot in, which is not actually being the one to do it, but being complicit. Being someone standing by doing nothing to stop it. Is it easier to know something or to do it? Let me just have fun. I'll give you a few examples of to kind of show sometimes you can know what to do and it can be really hard to do. So I'm going to give you a few examples. I'm going to give you 3. Here's the first one. In Exodus, one of the top 10 commandments is, we got it? Right there. How hard is that to apply? That is really hard. All right, there we go. Honor your father and mother. Easier to know or easier to do sometimes, right? Like, especially when they're like, curfew has changed. You're like, I hate you. You know? But you say it, it's all internal. It's all internal. You know, you don't say that stuff out loud. But how many of you are like, I got to mow the lawn again? What is happening with the grass? Just turn the sprinklers off. It'll die, and then no one has to do it anymore. I think sometimes much easier to know that we should do it than to actually do it. All right, what about this next one? And find yourself in here. Maybe one's harder for you than the other. Don't spread gossip among people. Don't share it. Don't pass it along. Put an end to it. In Proverbs, there's this great verse that talks about how gossip, it's described as like a juicy morsel. And we just can't help ourselves. Sometimes we're like, what did she say? What did he do? Who's what? Friday night, what happened? Tell me. I mean, I don't really want to know, but yeah, I do. You got to pray. You got to pray for her. You're not going to believe what happened on Friday. You got to pray for her. Let me tell you. All right, next one. Easier to know or easier to do? This one is definitely easier just to know and not do. Love your enemies. Love your enemies. Love those kids that reject you. Love those kids that make fun of you. Love those kids that look and act differently than you. That's tough to do. But that's what Jesus' followers aspire to. That's what they realize they're being called to. So it's always easier. Come here on a Tuesday night. The goal should not be, or if you're here on Sundays as well, should not be just to walk away intellectually more enlightened, but to take whatever one thing or two things or whatever it was and go, how do I walk this out in my home, in my neighborhood, at youth group, with my friends? And for the kid that's not my friend, who's on the receiving end of whatever bad thing is happening. See, you're not a Christian by what you know. You're a Christian by who you know. If you're a Jesus follower, you're a Christian by who you know, and the who is Jesus. That's what makes you a Christian. You know what? Other people will know that you're a Christian by how you behave, not by how you or what you believe. That is not how they'll know you're a Christian. It won't be because you say you believe this or you believe that. They'll know you are because you behave it. And again, never perfectly, but consistently. Your desire is to walk with Jesus. And if you're here today and you don't walk with Jesus, Jesus would say to you, follow me. Follow me. He just wants you to follow him and begin a journey and begin a walk. Some of you are in Christian homes and you're not following Jesus. Your parents are, and you're just kind of going along for the ride. He would still say to you, I want you to make a choice to follow me. So doing counts for everything. We hear it, see it, we apply it. And if there's going to be justice for all, then the followers of Jesus must answer the call. It must be all of us. If you're a Jesus follower, if there's going to be justice for all, we have to answer the call. We got to get involved, get our hands dirty, and figure out how we can do justice. And we're going to get super practical. Your team of leaders who create the content for these series, and they gave it to me, I was like, this is such good stuff. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to share with you some of the awesome things they came up with. So here's what I thought. I could be wrong. There are lots of obstacles for being a person that brings justice for all. Lots of it could be fear, temptation. But I think, as I thought about justice, I thought maybe this might be a big obstacle for you in seeing yourself as someone who can bring justice. Because doesn't it sometimes feel like justice is something that is reserved for the greatest and the smartest and the most powerful list? I mean, isn't that, when you think of justice, how many of you think of these guys? Okay? Like the Justice League. Like when I think of justice, I think of the Justice League. Now, some of you in here, you didn't think of them at all. You thought of this next group. The Supreme... We had a history teacher. That was it. Some of you are like, what NBA team is that? That's the Lakers. That's Shaq on the bottom, second to the right. So you can be a Supreme Court justice, okay? Now, that's what I think. If you think of justice, I think Batman, and I think Ruth Bader Ginsburg. That's who I think when I think of justice. Now, some of you didn't think of either of those groups. You thought of this last guy. David Justice, first baseman for the Atlanta Braves in the 1990s. Some of you, like Eva, only thought of David Justice because she's had a crush on him for so long. And if you don't know who David Justice is, even though I know you do, you probably know his ex-wife, Halle Berry. So there you go. That's the six degrees of Halle Berry. So, all right. So bringing justice is not just the responsibility of the greatest and the smartest and the noblest or some league of people that come together in tights. That God actually expects you to bring about justice in this world. And not only does he expect that of you, here's the crazy thing, and this is the part I still can't fully understand. He actually thinks you can do it. Regardless if you're the smartest or you wear a giant robe to work like they do, how awesome is that? They can wear anything under those robes and get away with it. So God, now we're all just picturing, right? Look, swim trunks. I'm seeing swim trunks. So here's how I know that God not only commands us to this, but he expects us of this. And he's given a verse that someone gave to me in a very kind of cool prophetic way many, many years ago, but it's from the book of Micah, which is in the Old Testament. Micah, give a shout out to Micah. All right. And to the number 6 and to the number 8. There we go. All right. He says, he has shown you, so God's saying through this prophet to us, I have shown you. And we're going to get to how he has shown us that in just a little bit. But he has shown you, O mortal, which all of us are, what is good. He's shown us what is good. And what does the Lord require of you and require of me? To act justly. Not to feel justice, to act justly. It's movement. It's action. It's not head knowledge. To act justly and to love mercy. You just love mercy. You love extending mercy to those who are hurting. You don't even care to try to find out why they're hurting. You just want to help them. You're not there to analyze their life to figure out if it was their fault or not as to why they're hurting. You just love mercy. You can't help yourself. You love mercy, and you want to walk humbly with God because you won't be able to bring about justice if you do not walk in humility. Arrogant and proud and self-righteous people do not bring about justice. They bring about injustice. Injustice is all about elevating one group or one person and lowering the other one. Well, someone who walks in humility, they don't want to make anybody feel lower than them. Action is required. Knowing counts for nothing. You don't have to have superpowers. And you don't have to wear a weird robe. You definitely don't have to play first base for the Atlanta Braves in the 1990s and divorce Halle Berry. Sorry. So the Bible gives us a way forward, and it's so practical, and it lays out for us in such simplistic terms how we can bring about justice if we don't have a gavel or a superpower, right? Proverbs 31, verses 8 through 9 says this. This is so simple. Speak up. Can you just say that with me? Ready? Speak up. Speak up for those who have no voice, for justice of all who are dispossessed. Speak up, judge righteously, and defend the cause of the oppressed and the needy. These are all action steps. So everybody open your mouth and say, ah. Ready? Ready? 1, 2, 3. You just spread COVID. All right. So, just kidding. I hope that's not true. So God is wanting you to open your mouth and speak up when you see injustice. And injustice can be really big, extreme things, and it can be little moments where Josh is being made fun of, where a black student is being discriminated against. So it could be it could be something a conversation that's going on in the parking lot that after youth group that shouldn't be happening. And justice speaks up and addresses whatever it is that it's seeing and it's hearing. Defend the oppressed and the needy. I'm so bummed because in a couple of weeks, I should be in Guatemala with Ethan and Nate, Katie. We won't be there. That really sucks. Does that suck? I think it sucks, yeah. Because we get to go and love on some of the poorest people I've ever met in my life. And to no fault of their own, but to a corrupt government that keeps people in poverty. And we get to go and love them and pray for them and visit them in the hospital and extend mercy and not judge them or think of ourselves as better than them, but humbly get on our knees in their mud hut homes and play with their kids and pretend like we understand what they're saying to us. It's a beautiful thing. So, Jesus, my Messiah, my Lord, and my Savior, the one who I have abandoned my life to. If you've never abandoned your life fully to Jesus, I pray that you will, because now at 44, I have no regrets abandoning my life to Jesus. I have no sense of like, oh, what I missed out on. What I missed out on was not walking with Jesus in my high school and junior high and my young adult years. That's when I missed out on doing life well and doing justice incredibly poorly because I didn't stand up for the weak and I didn't stand up for the one that had no voice. So Jesus is going around and he's doing ministry, and a really religious person comes to him, and I don't think this person's intentions were all that noble. They were kind of trying to make themselves look really good in Jesus' eye. They were a little bit self-righteous. If you don't know what self-righteousness looks like or feels like, it's like when you feel like someone's looking down at you. That's what self-righteousness is. They see themselves in some way being better than you, more spiritual than you, whatever it is. You're down there, they're up here. I'm sure you've all felt that from someone before. So this was a person trying to justify themselves in Jesus' eyes because they thought they were so amazing. And many of you have maybe heard this story. So this person was considered an expert. They were an expert. So they went up to Jesus to have a conversation with him, not knowing that Jesus was like a little more of an expert at all things compared to this person. They didn't quite know that just yet. So he wanted to test Jesus. So he said, Jesus, what do I have to do to inherit eternal life? Meaning, what good things must I do so that God will be so happy with me? And so Jesus asked him, well, you've read the law, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, all those books. What do you think it says? And he gives the right answer. He says, love God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind, and love others. And Jesus says, you have answered correctly. So the guy then asks the question that leads to this incredible fictional story that probably actually happened in real life many times, but Jesus shares it as a parable. And so the guy says, well, yeah, I've been doing this. I've been loving people. And Jesus says, that's good. You're loving your neighbor. So the guy asks the great question, who's my neighbor? Who's my neighbor? So here's Jesus' answer to the question of who is my neighbor, and it answers for you, who is your neighbor. So in reply, Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. This was probably not that uncommon, especially if you were traveling alone like this man was. That could happen to you. They stripped him of his clothes. They beat him and went away, leaving him half dead. So can you just imagine the visual? He's on the side of the road, half dead and all naked. That's how low his life has become. Talk about being vulnerable. Talk about injustice. This man is just trying to get from point A to B, and he had no idea what was waiting for him on that road. And now he finds himself laying in the road. So everyone listening to this story, of course, would have been somewhat captivated. Like, oh, wow, okay, yeah, we've seen and heard stuff like that happen. But then the story takes an interesting twist because of who Jesus decides to insert into his story. Here we go. He says a priest. So priest, think of someone who's like in the temple. Back then there was one temple. That's where you went to worship God. The priest worked in the temple. He was a very, very holy, respected man meant to take care of the sheep. Not literal sheep, sheep as in people. He was there to shepherd people, to help them. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man naked, hurting, and half dead, he walks to the other side of the street. Now, everyone listening to this story would have just been like, and if you've heard this story, you're not doing that because you know the end of the story. But everybody hearing that, when they would have heard the priest walk to the other side of the road, they would have just been, wait a minute, what? So he goes on. So too, a Levite. A Levite was someone who assisted the priests in the temple. So these are two temple guys. These are two men of God. And when he came to the place and saw him, he too passed by on the other side. To which everyone at this point is like, where is this story going? I did not see that coming. That is crazy. I can't believe they just crossed the street. Then the story takes a dramatic twist that I can't even, and I'm not even good enough to use the English language to describe how incredibly dramatic this next sentence would have been. Jesus says, but a Samaritan, which means probably nothing to you and mostly nothing to me, other than I have learned that priests and Levites and Jewish people did not like Samaritans. They did not like going to Samaria. In fact, if you remember the story, Jesus went to Samaria. His disciples were like, why are we going there? And when he got to Samaria, he started speaking to a woman, and the woman's like, why are you talking to me? You, Jews, like Jesus, don't like us. Why are you talking to us? So a Samaritan shows up in this story, and as he traveled, he came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him, which everybody would have went, wait a minute, what? The priest and the Levite crossed the street, and the Samaritan, the bad guy, remember he's like the Darth Vader in our stories, is the one kneeling down at the half-dead body. He took pity on him. Get this, he didn't stop with feelings, because that's often where we stop with justice, is just, I feel there's an injustice. He didn't stop with, oh, I feel an injustice has happened. He went further. He went to him. He bandaged him, pouring oil and wine, and he put the man on his own donkey and brought him to an inn and took care of him. He took money and bandages, and he walked and let this other guy ride, and he paid for him to stay the night. He went to the innkeeper, goes, take care of him. Here's my money. Practical. This man, this Samaritan, he knew how to act justly and love mercy and walk humbly with his God. He knew that he couldn't just settle for seeing an injustice and then just walking by. He had to speak up. He had to do something. He had to pay up, whatever it took in that moment. We live in a culture today where injustice gets mocked by Christians. They don't want to go lean down to see what happened. They just want to sit back and read about it and judge it from a distance and go, that sucks for them. I'm sure they probably did something. They shouldn't have been there. Or, oh, it's probably their fault. Not non-Christians, like Christians. Christians do that. They walk to the other side of the road. Maybe not literally, but in their heart, they just go, all right, hope you figure that out. I hope that goes well for you. It's not my problem. Don't take your cues from our culture on how to do justice. Go to Jesus. Go to his teachings. Go to his actions. Because do you know who loves mercy? And do you know who never settles for just feeling injustice but wants to do something about it? Jesus. Because you know, a great video Nate had me watch before I did this, it talks about how justice is when you make someone else's problem your problem. You make it your problem. It's not just Connor's problem. I'm going to make it mine. Might even be Connor's fault. I'm going to enter into the mess like that guy did with his bandages and the blood and whatever else was going on in that scene. See, justice doesn't want to go, oh, you stupid Connor, what did you do? I'm sure you did something. What an idiot. What a moron. You probably deserved it. This, that, and the other. The Samaritan didn't feel like he needed to figure out the story, like he's on some horrible CSI television show, like recreating the events of that evening to determine if he was worthy of justice. We can overthink it. The Samaritan just crossed the street and go, here's a need. I can see it. I can meet it. I can do it right now. I can speak up. I can do something. Take your cues from Jesus, not our culture when it comes to justice. Make other people's problems your problems by entering into their mess and going, how can I help? I understand not everybody wants help with their messes, so you have to use wisdom, right? But we should lean towards that direction. When I see young people like Ethan who want to lean in that direction, to go to a different country, just to love on people, that inspires me. That humbles me. That gets me so pumped up for the future of Christianity. So you know what justice looks like? To do justice is to do something. To do justice is to do something. To do justice is to do anything except remain silent and look the other way. And you can do this in little moments throughout your life, big or small, and especially as you go back to school or you go back to homeschool, whatever it may be. What can you do to not cross the street, but to engage with what's happening? You know who made everyone else's problem his problem? Jesus. He looked at the whole world and sin, and he said, I'm going to make that my problem. Jesus isn't asking us to do something he didn't already do. That's why he can say in Micah, I have shown you, O mortals, because he showed us in Jesus. Jesus said, Addison, Adam, Stephanie, Eva, your problems are my problems, and I'm going to do something about it. And he would also say, Adam and Addison and Sarah, you don't even deserve it. But I'm going to meet you where you're at. I'm going to do something about it. That's the beauty of the good news and the gospel of Jesus Christ, is that he continually makes our problems his problems, and he took them to that cross to do something about it. So, I want you to think about injustice that you've witnessed in your life. I want you to think about maybe times where you were silent when you should have spoke up. I want you to think of a time when you were the one speaking up, but you were the one saying things that were not cool, that were not good, that were not righteous. I want you to think about some of the people you may have in your life that you know make it so difficult for you to speak up because of the peer pressure or the temptation. They just make it so hard for your voice to open up. But I'm telling you, God wants you to do it, and God believes you can do it. And when you get back to school especially, you're going to have lots of opportunities to practice this. I mean, it's just going to, people are stressed out. It is not an easy time for most people right now. And if you're the person that maybe is on the giving end of some of this injustice through sarcasm or rudeness or meanness, just turn to Jesus. Ask him to forgive you of your sin, repent, and walk with him. So I want to pray for you. And then am I inviting Tristan or Nate to dismiss into groups tonight? Or is there no time? I went long, didn't I? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, no, I only saw the one. If you have some. Okay, no, I don't. I mean, I have them because I have the internet, so technically I do have them. I do not have them currently up on my screen. What is, as Nate's getting that ready, thank you. This is a heavy phone, so I'm going to use this. First question, what have you been a witness to injustice? When have you seen some sort of injustice? And before you answer, obviously just don't use names or anything like that. Don't be like rhymes with Badam, and I know you mean Adam. Okay, like don't do that. But like, who can recall quickly an injustice you've seen or experienced maybe recently in your world or in the world? Just raise your hand and I'll call on you. Who's got something you've seen or heard or experienced? Anybody? I know there's somebody. Yes, Deb. Columbine. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. 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 Unfortunately, school shootings are not just a 2000s thing, but it's a 1994 thing too. And kids that had nothing to do with that day and that horrific killing spree paid a price as well, unnecessarily. Someone else have an incident from your life, big or small, or just in the world that you've seen that you want to share? Some brave people? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, how many of you guys know there's peers of yours, and maybe even it's you tonight? And if it is you, please talk with one of our leaders here tonight. But how many of you guys know there's some peers of yours that are suffering silently, having thoughts like that? You know? Yeah. I'm sure it didn't feel very small in the moment when it's happening to you in the midst of a large crowd. That's very tough. That's very tough, especially uh, when sporting events are made for that. It's kind of part of what makes sports great. It's part of what we're going to miss in sports because there's no one in the stands to scream. We need to just put you everywhere and let you do your thing. Sounds good to me. Thank you for sharing that. We have time for one more, and then we'll ask the next one. But who has something you've seen or experienced? Okay. Mm, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you weren't a part of the group. That is sadly an all familiar story, and that's why, as Jesus followers, we have to just do the opposite of that. We have to have our eyes open for the friend or the kid or the peer who is on maybe the outside of our group, right? And make sure we're sitting with them at youth group, we're hanging out with them, we're loving on them, we're following up with them during the week to see how they're doing so that no one ever has to feel what you felt and what you felt and what those kids that were being bullied felt. So let me ask you this. You don't have to totally rat yourself out, but maybe just a little bit of transparency. How many find it hard to speak up and do something when it's happening? Raise your hand, nice and high, like proudly, like, all right, so we got a lot of us, okay? Raise your hand if that's not a big struggle for you. Got one here, here. Anybody else? I got two hands, is that right? Okay. So those could be a couple people we could ask some questions to, right? Like, hey, how does that work? And were you always comfortable that way? If not, how did you get that way? Or what is it that compels you to want to say something? Because my wife is so good at that. Oh my gosh. I'm always like, she's like 115 pounds, but like a lion on the inside. And whenever I'm having trouble with anything, I'm like, babe, can you just take the phone and handle this? And she'll be like, yes, can I speak to the manager? And then it's all taken care of. It's so amazing. I really, really love it a lot. Because if I get pulled over, I'm just going to be like, babe, can you handle this? Get back in the car and wait for her. And she is just so much stronger than me. It's pretty ridiculous. So we have some work to do, right? Because we're going to be thrown into fire in some situation where something's being talked about that shouldn't be talked about. Someone is being talked about that shouldn't be being talked about. And then in those moments, it's like, God, would you give me the strength to act justly, to love mercy, and walk humbly right now with you, even if it costs me. It cost the Good Samaritan quite a bit. He had to walk, his bandages that cost him money. He had to pay for the end. I mean, it could have cost him his reputation, right? All kinds of things. So, looking back, what could you do differently when you witness injustice? So you know what maybe you did do. Looking ahead, would anybody have something you can share that you would like to do differently the next time you encounter something that isn't right and isn't good? What is something you want to do in those moments? Who would like to speak to that? Be brave, be loud. Speak up now. It's good for practice to speak up later. So try it here when it's really safe, because there's no safer room to speak up than this one. What do you think you can do differently if you can think of times where you maybe didn't do what you know you should have done? Who'd like to share? Somebody. Give me one. Give me one. One person. Who's going to be it? I know you're out there. I know you want to. I'm going to commit an act of injustice right now and see if you say anything. No. Okay. Okay, well, let's just do a real easy one. How many of you guys have been standing in a circle and everybody starts talking about somebody else that ain't in the circle? Anybody experience that one? Everybody should have their hand up unless you have no friends. They won't get you friends, and then they'll gossip. And then they'll gossip about other people that aren't your friends, and then you'll have a story. Okay, so everybody, that's happened to everybody, and will happen again to everyone. So that's a real easy example of like, you just know when you get ready to be with that group or those kids or at lunch that you're just prepared to go, God, give me the courage to say and do what is right in that moment, and he will help you. So I don't have Nate's fingerprint, so that is the last of our questions on his phone. And that'd be weird if I did, though, right? So I want to pray for you and pray for me. I am not immune to being a coward. And because self-preservation is so strong, right? I don't want to be disliked. I don't want to be the one that everyone's going, now they're all talking about me because I was the one that stood up to them. I mean, all those fears. So I want to just pray for you. You pray for me that God would help us to be people of justice, to do something, to speak up and say something. So let's pray. God, I thank you for everyone here, everyone's gathered here tonight. I thank you for the wonderful youth team that creates a safe place for us to gather. Lord, I just love you, and I thank you. And I just pray, God, that as we're walking throughout our lives, as we're even walking on social media, if we see someone who's clearly hurting, we could speak up. We could pray for them. We could encourage them. We could call them. We could text them to see how they're doing. Would you show us what it looks like, God, to be like the Good Samaritan, to cross the street instead of just turning a blind eye? Lord, help us to bring justice for all. That's what you command us to do, and that's what you believe we can do. In Jesus' name, amen.